Okay.
6/31, a meeting of the Home Rule School District Charter Commission Educational Program Subcommittee is being held January 27, 2015 at 6/31 in the conference room 100B at the Dallas ISD Central Administration Building, 3700 Ross Avenue, Dallas, Texas, 75204. We're going to call to order and establish a quorum, starting from my left.
Bob Weiss, present.
Ron Oliver, present.
Lou Blackburn Jr., present.
Isaac Freeman, present.
And we're going to discuss the educational programs to give to our board, the ISD board, for consideration, Board of Trustees. And let me quickly tell you what I copied for y'all tonight. This was the notes that we took from the meeting we had some time back in November. And then on top are some of the additional remarks that Shirley put in. And basically, again, like you were saying, Bob, we want to recognize some of the successful programs in the district, like the personalized learning that's going on at Marsh with Isaac. But I think what we can do is we can look at these and decide a couple of things tonight. What I put down was dates, like when would we maybe think this prepared, list of suggestions might be needed to be put in. What number of items are we talking about? Like, do we want an extensive amount, or do we want to prioritize the programming and preparing the list? So I'm open to any suggestions you have. I think that we have a lot of good ideas already down, and we've discussed quite a few of them. So I don't think it's like we're looking for the ideas anymore. The programming and the opportunities to enrich the schools, I believe, are here, and we may have a couple that we've missed, but not too many. So
let me just speak to the timing.
Okay.
Kind of listening to the governance group this morning. We're going to get a little later start next week with the accountability folks.
Okay.
I've held off on the budget work because the thing I'm over recommending, we already know early childhood is a huge budget issue. And I didn't disagree with Edwin saying it just depends on the money we get from Austin, but we got to start with some premises, and we're going to have an audit. There's really nothing to comment on. That's state law. So if we can work our way through some of this stuff, I think we are going to have a first feedback on February 16th just to see how we're doing. We can still be educating ourselves on these topics. I think when you come back from June 19th and you say, let's say sometime in April, we're really getting enough ideas that have merit. All ideas have merit, but something we can put substance behind. And we kind of work that through. We just have a couple of meetings in April. We're down into May drafting, editing, circulating, coming up with a document. We need to then look at June 19th, and I don't know the trustee meeting. I know City Council starts getting, with elections. I don't know who sits when. So if we're talking about the current board, there's an election May 9th, but I don't know when they. What's the word? June sometime.
We start by the end of June, but
before the 19th.
After.
Okay, so we're out the 19th. We need to, in my opinion, turn everything in before the 19th, and I feel an obligation to turn them into the people who appointed us, especially after last week. I mean, I feel they got hit a bit unfairly, and I think we will both gain a certain kind of moral victory, in my opinion, just my opinion, if we can give it back to the people who appointed us. And I just, so sometime before June 19th, we get maybe a couple of weeks where we're going to get people to massage who our best writers are, so it's coherent. You get someone to help us with the presentation. And as far as that goes, I was saying Miguel, President Solis, has already invited us to present to the full board with all 15 of us. And we might split the presentation amongst the 4 officers, or assign people, have that dialogue. It would be their meeting. They would be inviting us. And so if you hear, as an aside, and for the record, anyone suggests that President Solis is not been gracious, he texted me on my way home from our last full meeting, and we chatted, and it was a very pleasant conversation, unbeknownst to me what was he dealing with Channel 8 or whatever else that stuff was. But to us, he said absolutely. So he needs, I'm looking at Mr. Harris, just kind of scheduling back from the 19th, somewhere. So if we're done, Ron, I'm a little long-winded, but I'm just thinking out loud with you, somewhere we're going to meet through March. We're already, getting into February. I already informed Mr. Harris I'll be out of the country doing my grandchild to Sweden trip and a wedding anniversary from March 21st to April 3rd. So that doesn't mean the work would stop. That means somewhere in April and May, given school scheduling and testing and you guys as teachers getting work, we got a draft.
Right.
And then given postings and so I'm thinking sometime, by the end of March, I'll have all the groups will have stuff, and then in April we start synthesizing it. Maybe we have these periodic report outs, what we've been hearing, so we give the whole commission a chance to kind of do feedback, get it back into our groups, and go forward.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, someone's going to have to volunteer to help synthesize this with me. I'm not a great drafter, and then. The motion was clear. We're going to take a vote on the final summary report before we ask to be invited. And I will encourage all of us to vote yes. And then come to the meeting. And everyone will hopefully, President Solis will get each of our 15, responses. I want to thank them for appointing us.
I agree.
I'm not going to run away from it. So.
Keep in mind, in the month of June 25th would be the board meeting date, but also that's the same night they approve the budget.
Well, how do we get in before the 19th? Because that's important.
June the 11th is the board briefing day, but that's usually a discussion day, and there are no actions. So I was thinking you'd have to make consider a called board meeting to.
Is that legal?
A call board meeting? Yes.
To hear us. I don't want to do this to a
Are you asking them to take any action?
No, to receive the report. Now, I don't know any of the legal stuff, but I want an official meeting. I don't want a briefing. It means the work we've done. No, or help me out here.
Basically, we want to submit
so if you
our
look at the
recommendations.
Then, if the board wants to take any action, they can do it at the meeting at the end of the month on the 25th. If the board wants to vote to accept it, but you could brief them. It would just be on the briefing agenda.
I don't know. That's not what I had in mind with Miguel. I want to give it during a meeting. Not that they have to act. Do they have to vote to accept it?
They don't have to, but someone may make that
motion.
Well, I think they're kind of both the same, but would you want an evening meeting? I think that's the only difference to me, except the briefings are just
briefing at 11:30. The board meeting is at 6 o'clock.
My feeling was it's a regular board meeting because I think it has the kind of stature.
When's the one prior in May?
Well, it's June 11th.
Well, when's the actual board meeting in May? Is that the last week of the...
May would be...
Just curious.
The 28th.
28th. It's almost here.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think the board meeting would be better. Because that briefing, I don't think it's... I think it'd be also Brian a show of respect that we actually presented it at the board meeting. I think they should be recognized for their participation in the selection of the.
And they participated.
Right, they came and everything. That would make because I think it would be more of a.
I don't want them divided from us as the period on this is what I thought was happening yesterday.
Matter to you?
What's the purpose of the briefing?
To get all the information.
Right. Before they vote at the end of the month, the briefing is to gather information about the different items they're going to be asked to vote on.
Because if that's the case, if they're trying to gather information about the items that they would vote on, it would almost make sense to make a presentation at the briefing for that purpose if that was to contribute to the collection of information. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't be at the meeting, but it seems like maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it seems like by the time the meeting happens, minds are made up. Like, especially if things are already on the table. I don't know.
Well, I'm looking at it as a closure.
Okay, then
I'm looking at it as closure.
well, then let's think about it this way. Then, if we were going to present it at a board meeting, then maybe do it at the one at the end of May, so that they have time to actually, if there was anything to come out of it, then it would be something that they could have time to act on.
See,
I don't know.
if President Solis is appointing whatever task force I read in the paper, I have no idea. Again, can it carry over if there's new trustees? So I don't know any of that. So what's important to me in terms of the context for the community is that this started with us getting appointed by these 9 people. We are finishing it by turning it in. We have no statutory standing to compel them to do anything other than accept this in a real meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't want to be diminished because somehow we're briefing them up for further action. No, it's yours now.
Gotcha. Okay.
And whether they vote to accept it or not, we can't even compel them to do that. I'm going to call Lou. I'm saying at least just say thanks. Someone, I hope they're out of the 9 thanks us for what we did. That would be nice.
Accept the Dallas for Chiefs recommendation.
Yeah. So I would hope. Yeah, they're not voting to act on it. Just as a matter of respect. And I hope someone says thank you, frankly, for the record, I'm saying.
I'd recommend that we request a called board meeting. That way it's the only thing on the agenda, because
I am there with you.
You just never know what other issues are going to come
Good
up.
point.
And they say...
Can we do that for the 11th?
Well,
or just take the 28th. That is a great point.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I didn't know if that was stepping over the line.
no, I mean, the board has called board meetings for various things.
Because I think this is an exceptional issue. I think this is something that is out of the norm, and the year's been out of the norm in that respect, too.
All the guys are going to wear ties, for the record.
If we do it at the briefing time, we have some teachers that won't be able to be there, but they'll be in.
No, we're doing it at 6.
If you do it in the afternoon, the briefings start at 11:30. They typically run
forever
past 6:30. So you could be, if you're at the end of the call board meeting, depending on what's on the briefing agenda, you could be looking at 9, 10 o'clock before it's time for you to get on.
No, I'm not doing that.
We were saying a meeting that was just
a separate meeting day.
As essentially this only.
Right.
Which I don't think that's...
Can we legally do that?
Yes, you just have to pick the day away from...
Well, that can be determined, but probably the sooner we get that in, the better.
Well, this is what I'm asking. I mean, you posed the question I hadn't thought about. Working back from the 19th of June, we know there's one meeting on the 28th, so you're either going to take advantage of a date on that calendar, or ask them sometime between the 11th of June and the 19th of June, or earlier in May if we get done in April writing the piece. And then we're going to have extra meetings possibly because we only have 2 called in April. So I think what I'm hearing, I don't know. I mean, I think we want a full board meeting. Whether it's called or not, I don't know the nuance of that, frankly, and I'll take whatever guidance happens. We got to get it done before the 19th, because that to me is absolutely, we vaporize on the 19th.
But to me, it's an issue of solidarity. I think it needs to happen for the district, and it needs to happen for the commission, because we all agreed on one thing. We wanted to present our findings and our recommendations. And I think there needs to be closure, solidarity, and a unity there at the end that would make, because I feel like there's quite a bit that's been accomplished. And like what you're saying, the good things that are going on in the schools are intertwined with what we're recommending. We're taking the best from the best.
So let me ask you this. I mean, there's going to be an election on the 9th. 3 of them are up. Mm-hmm. We don't know. We can't get involved in that in any way. I will absolutely stomp that out. No one has even suggested that. So after the 9th, we could be presenting to someone who might have lost a rate or chosen not to run. But nonetheless, there's still the sitting trustee until June 25th, correct?
Until it's sworn in, correct.
And that was my only concern, that let's say that all 3 choose not to run again.
Yeah.
Then we are talking to 9 people, 3 of whom, will take absolutely no action. And so there is not that continuity. Although I would imagine the other candidates are, whoever is elected would be there.
Matt, can we be on the record that we would invite any candidate who might win
Yeah,
and replace someone?
I think that'd be, yeah.
I think that's a great idea, to the meeting
Mhm.
as a candidate-elect
Right.
to be witness to. I think that's important. I mean, we already know one of us is running.
Mhm.
I mean, so we don't know who else amongst us might choose that. Yeah, so...
Were you saying you're right?
No.
Okay.
So that's a good point. We need to remember, make sure whoever has won, if they're not a current incumbent, is invited.
I guess, what do you think? Before our commission expires?
I think it's essential. I mean,
Right.
we're done.
So between the 28th and when they meet is the 25th, right?
Correct.
June. Okay, you have the 4th. I'm assuming Thursday's the optimal night. The 4th, the 11th. and
Well, call board meetings have been done on different days, Mondays and various days, so.
I think if the election is on what night? The 9th?
Yes.
The
That's not the same.
So if we aim for the 28th, I think it's doable to get it through our process. That's one possibility.
When do we out of school?
June 6th.
June what?
6th.
6th. So that's the following.
Oh, so
Or
school's
June
over.
5th.
When is school over? That's crucial. Lord of God, we want to do this well.
I think, is it,
Right.
yeah, it's
That's
like June
the thing.
6th or June 5th.
I don't think we want to wait till after school's out.
No.
The 28th, I think, is what we need to set it for. But see, they've already got a board meeting, so we would be in the agenda with everything else.
Well, that's...
Or that's possible, I mean.
If you do it that night, you could be in that agenda as a presentation to the board.
Right.
Or, that's probably the best way to do it if you're not going to do it on a different night.
I say do it before school's out. So that gives you either that night or the following week. It gives you about 3 days.
Well, I'm for trying to accommodate their schedule. If there are other items, and we can ask to be first, so there's maximum media exposure, I'm sure they'll be there anyhow. Then we aim for the...
Well, I'm just...
No?
It's a long night anyway, on the last...
Is it?
If it's in June, it's a long night anyway. But if you want to do it before, so
it's like May 28th?
May 28th, that's a Thursday.
If we get our name in the hopper quick enough, that might determine how much they put on the agenda too, right?
But the meeting starts at 6 if you're asked to, do this part in the beginning.
Yeah.
So and then the nice thing about this, if that melts down, we still have something till June 19th, even if school's over, to ask for a called meeting of the still sitting board. No, I mean, I don't, maybe, and that would be June 11th?
Yeah.
I say yes.
Okay.
I think we need to, and I think that's a good deadline, because I think
we need a deadline.
it needs to be in, and we need to, because June, when I think of June, I'm thinking out of school anyway. I mean, if there's something that comes up after that.
I think everyone's attention is going to then be focused on
waiting.
sitting
Right.
and voting on the budget, and we will be, washed out to... Let's see.
We can push it. Maybe we can get with everybody, but I think...
So on June 19th, we need some kind of magic show where we just disappear. Tongue in cheek.
How about you can burn our binders?
There you go.
Or tell everyone we were never here to begin with. That's either.
The record will stand for a minimum of 6 years, and the DSD is going to be the repository. So you young guys will have this trailing you, well, us old guys will be long ago and gone into pasture. All right. Good point. Thank you.
So
that clarifies
that. And now, here's where I was thinking, because we, in terms of putting this together, we're not getting an optimal group of, in terms of coming to these subjects. So I'm trying to think, are we going to have to extend this maybe as homework when we meet as a full group, or should we feel confident that we have 80 to 90% of the topics here that might be used or reasonable? because I don't want to exclude anyone, but to be an asset, they almost have to be here. If they're not here, we've got to come up either with another way of collecting the information, or maybe bringing it up at our bi-monthly meetings. Because there's a lot here to digest. And there seems to be some agreement on some of the major things, though. And, we talked about the new state bill that gives a little more autonomy to the schools. Bill 5, is that it? State Bill 5?
Okay, House Bill 5.
House Bill 5.
You're talking about the one from last session, like the testing bill?
Well, yeah, but it seems to, it seems like, we're talking about community schools. There's a lot there that you can kind of influence what's going on the campus. I think when we present this, we're just basically giving ideas, right, to in terms of the subcommittee for educational programs. Are we wanting to just give them a list, or do we want to have an attachment to success stories that exist in the district? Like personalized learning. What's going on in the district that we can point to and say, here's a good example of how successful this is in terms of Montessori or anything. Early childhood development, bilingual programs. Or do we want to just give them a list or a proposal of ideas and say, here's some great ideas, but they're really not attached to anything specifically?
Could be a mix of those.
Does
it have to be either or?
Well, I'm just asking. What do you think? Is it?
We would have to have some supporting information. So I would say just a list of programs to try.
And where they're taking place now.
Well, let me reframe that, because I think just the list of what's already going on will be looked at as a failure without why we have like 5, 6 critical things that can be improved upon or expanded.
Right.
But I was trying to say in the last meeting under SB2, if you really want a community school, then go form it and go take it directly to the board.
Right.
If you're a charter operator and you want to do something like they do in Grand Prairie and share a facility, put it before the trustee. SB2 lets you do that. If you're teachers, I've said repeatedly, publicly, and to the teachers and principals groups, form your own school. I'm an old preschool person. Make it a co-op. Do a different model, or replicate a magnet school and take over one of the 43 IR schools. I think we have to, identify those core things, and then if we can add value to it, then we should. And I think rather than a laundry list, which will just go, hey,
that will work.
No.
Now, I can give you an example. There's these 2 guys that wanted to turn their school into a magnet art school in Eau Claire. And right after Mr. Miles came here, they actually sent him an email. That was me and Mr. Rotimi, because we wanted to turn our school into an arts magnet over in North Eau Claire. Because we felt that all we had to do was adjust the curriculum slightly to where when the kids came through, they would actually have studio time and regular class time. So I'm right there with you on that. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get the support at the local level.
Well, you have a teacher, Rose Parker, who retired and did that using technology, and it was her high school. And when I talked to her in the last few months, I said, why don't you just take an existing school and put that in, like Dade, if that's so, crazy. I don't know. And she said, sure. I checked, and there's a process where you can get it before the board. And they have to challenge that because SB2 took it out of the purview of the superintendent. And there's 2 tracks. A parent and teachers in a school can reformulate their school, or an outside group can come and create their own school, not just take over a school. And one of the things I've been going around telling people, that's just a tool that the same people who backed SOPS and the homeroom charter idea never pushed to implement, whether it's Lumen or CAMP or Uplift or just your own schools. The teachers might want to.
I guess that may be the way I look at this. I guess the information needs to go to people, or go to the parents or to teachers, if you want something in the school, exactly how would you take it? Where would you go with it? How could you present it to the board? How could they comfortably come in and feel like they had an opportunity? And I think most people would be quite intimidated to do that. So, is there a possibility that there's a way that the information would get out to assist people in suggesting what the school may or may not have?
So, this is just sort of
Right.
thought storm, but one is, I think if we're going to make a presentation to the board and there's any intention that something is going to come of it, it needs to be a short list that's well researched and
Right.
it has tangible results. Like
Right.
I think if we gave them a list of like 15, 20 things like this, then they would just be like, okay, you're right, we totally agree, pick one. But if it was like, we believe that these are the three,
number of items.
right, if we believe that like these are the three highest leverage things that will make a huge difference, and then start this off. So I think the presentation to the board, we do that with the research. Now on the other side of that, that doesn't mean we throw away the rest of the recommendations. If we're trying to also communicate out to the community as well, these other groups, that doesn't mean that it can go away. It could be like, also, everyone else, here
Well,
you go.
you could also probably submit that, and Bob could probably submit it too, generally speaking, through anybody that wanted it.
Right.
So, once it's presented to them, I think it's not inappropriate to you can hand it off to someone who can publish it. Just things that would bring to the forefront our thoughts about it. So, and I had that down. Reasonable number of items and prioritize. Just something that when you gave them, you thought these are maybe the 3 or 4 or 5 most critical things.
I will just tell you the one. Let me just get to looking at this list. I think you can organize these, and I'd be happy to kind of just look at it. If you go to the second page, the one to me is a third rail, is the TEI and the principal evaluations. Now, I don't know, because Julie wants to take that up in the accountability piece, what we can suggest around that. And I think the 4 teachers and Stephanie and Cheryl, the people who've been there, need to see what does that exactly mean. We had a interesting conversation with Dr. Oakley that night, but I felt incomplete when she was done and not being in it, confused. Dino helped me just pull off the TEA because I wasn't sure how to do it, all the IR schools, and I've been at home just going through what does that suggest. So that one, it just concerns me that it doesn't become so politicized that what either we're saying do away with them, or we're going to make this part of a broader accountability under a system of SEI, CEIs, TEIs, principal evaluations. That's the personnel accountability issue. And are we as 15 people going to comment on that as a recommendation? And I don't know. I'm not nervous about taking it on. The question is, to what end? And I don't have that answer yet, because I don't want to get into a point of view that is anti-accountability, because I don't believe that. The question is, I would have to hear from our teachers. Does that make sense? Would we recommend to modify? We already know parents have caused its modification on those very early
I'm on a
tests.
commission here tomorrow night, or we meet over the fine arts thing.
Right. So my point is, if you might want to feed what's going on into the accountability group, but I don't think it's inappropriate here. But that's the thing that jumped out at me. I don't know. I don't mind us, the HRC, having a point of view on it. I don't know how to get at it. In my history, I take responsibility for helping invent the SEI. And I thought on a school basis, schools could show, because schools work as a team. It's the principals, the teachers, it's the custodians, it's the parents, all have an outcome. This has now been, drilled down to, we're going to measure to some value-added measurement, statistically, the value that a teacher imputes to the improvement of the kid. And that's a heavy lift in the time that we have. So anyway, that's just the one I flagged because it came up this morning as almost a governance issue. and it's Julie who's intends to raise this accountability issue. And I don't know how we get through that. I would defer to the wisdom of the group.
So do you think we sidestep it completely, or do you think we...
I don't know. I'm laying it out.
I don't know.
It's highly charged, and I'm not opposed to taking on highly charged things, but I don't...
My
I would
bigger issue is
defer
not
to you guys.
my bigger issue is not the discussion thereof, but more so that we don't want to be redundant. I mean, if they're going to take it on, there's no. I mean, I'm not saying there's no point, but we just need to decide if that's going to be the forum for that discussion. We can go to that meeting, But
this thing.
I mean, the TEI stuff, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, Julie wanted to put it in our work group.
Oh well, if it's going to be put in our work group instead of theirs.
I'm just saying, forget it's just aroused interest in the commission. I'm just saying, from above the trees, I don't know enough about it.
Oh, you're asking whether or not we should tackle it at all.
Yeah, and if so, how do we go do that?
I think he's asking from our personal experience.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I think because for a couple of reasons.
And
one,
I respect you guys. I mean, Benita and you and Julie. I mean, clearly it's on people's minds.
So first of all, I don't think it'd be a bad idea. I actually think it'd be a really good idea for a couple of reasons. One is that it's a flexible process, and the process is changing as it's happening. Like for example, they've already readjusted certain things. The way that it looks even now during implementation is radically different from what it was back when they rolled it out to us initially. And not radically, but significantly, I should say, not radically. But I think the part of the process, and they've even said they've been very upfront about the fact that it is something that they stand behind, but it is obviously an imperfect but it is an imperfect system because it's new and because it hasn't really been tried in the way that we're doing it before. And so I think it might actually be welcome if there was a deeper look saying, hey, I think a wholesale rejection of the system probably wouldn't go down very well, but I think if we were to take a look at it and say, here's some critical feedback to make it more purposeful and useful for teachers and to have all parties involved benefit, that would be pretty substantially important, I think.
I like that. That changes my thing.
This is a microcosm of what I think is good for the district right now. The fact that the district has immediately addressed a new procedure system,
like the ACP
and they're immediately tweaking it, I think is a positive for the district because that's not consistent the way we've done business before. TEI and the principal evaluation are two of the best things the district has ever done.
Also shows that they're listening, the readjustment shows that they're listening.
Well, I'm sorry, what?
I was just reminding you we're recording.
No, it is. Because I think I've been in the district long enough to realize that there's never been anything in place that has really substantially altered bad teaching or anything that wasn't working. It's just kept going and going and going. This actually has a purpose. Now, they may change some of the components of it, but I think it's brilliant because just simply this. Let's talk about one. We talked about this last time we met. The fact that you're retaining your best help through the summer because they're waiting for the results in September means that your turnover is decreasing radically, which means that your system in place is going to be stronger. So in time, it will build a much larger and more I guess, stronger or more qualified core group of teachers.
I'm open. I just need to. I like how you're approaching it because, again, my whole view of this has been asset building, but I'm prepared to take on that which is no good. And you hear the teachers, at least in our meeting, suggesting that was onerous somehow. And I think you four plus Stephanie, who I have a high regard for, has to, kind of step up. And then I don't know, Lou. I mean, you watch it at work. Is that a list we should try? It seems to be a great interest across the commission. I'm just, wary, but I think, Isaac, you framed it up in a way I can understand.
I guess I'm not worried about it.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I think there is great interest. I don't know how we would affect it. I guess what would be the value that we bring to the discussion? I'm not sure of that. I think even if we got into it and we sought public opinion, we'd get a lot of opinions, but those are same opinions that the administration probably already gets and board members already get. Now, I'm not sure if there would be additional value that we would bring to seeking public's or teachers' opinions or even researching it. So, I don't know.
The essence of value-added measurement is something I've been studying way before.
Well, it has three areas I like in the assessment. Let's say for teacher accountability, it has the straight pass-fail. Then it has the CEIs, and then if you don't fall within the CEIs, like me as an art teacher, there's not comparable data. It's passing, or the next step is peer groups. And I like the fact that it kind of encompasses all the different possible outcomes that a teacher might have, and still can fairly, or hopefully fairly, always evaluate where they are in a matrix of, a curve. And this is an outcome society. I mean, unfortunately, the children are basically a gauge for success for the district. And us, if they're not succeeding, we're not doing our job. So, I mean, in that part, I like it. I mean, now you said something that I agree with. It may not. It may just be that we're really not going to add much to what's being said.
Right.
So let me propose this as a process thing, because you're sensing my apprehension. And now after last week, my antennae are way up. Where they were not. I was naive before in a particular way. What if, since we're cutting across all our little subgroups, and I'm not to dump on the teachers and Stephanie and maybe Shirley, and then anyone else who'd like to grow, do that, and because it deals with governance, accountability, education programming. We don't have a group just on, what do they call it here? Human capital.
Human capital management.
People. Maybe, as a side thing, since this has raised its head, we have you six, and Lou, you're always a good skeptic, and I appreciate that. No, I'm saying that for that's good. And who else would like to join? So we can understand it from a lot of perspectives and reach some conclusion about how it should be tweaked, or the process that if we're going to be put in a position, for the record, of looking like we're against accountability across the system, then I personally will have a very difficult problem with that. The method of using statistics to evaluate teachers can go to an absurd outcome, as we've witnessed in this pushback from parents in elementary school. I mean, that videotape on YouTube of the kid doing jumping or rolling over someone sent me, it was just, I'm going, wow. And being an early childhood person before my career changed, I would go, wow, I would be resistant 100%. Unless you're really watching the kid and taking notes and doing really good, highly trained observational stuff. So, I think it's not inappropriate you persuade me that. To address it, I think we have to be thoughtful and you guys represent the DAC, you represent, we have administration, and I think it's important for you to share, that view, and I think we've heard from teachers groups. I'm with Lou, the community's already chosen sides for those who even know about it in this thing. I think we can wind our way through and maybe add value in the conversation. I didn't know it was organic. I didn't know it was changing.
Well, and there's also some parts of it that necessarily have to change. Like, for example, this year, the Distinguished Teacher Review, they didn't really know. I mean, they could project, but they couldn't exactly predict the number of teachers that would qualify, the number of teachers that would apply, and so they had a projected distribution, but now next year they'll have an actual distribution, and so they'll be able to then readjust, the cut scores and whatever based on the actual distribution. There's also things like, if they're moving towards schools of choice that have different models of what a day in a school looks like, necessarily the way that teachers are evaluated at a military academy is going to look different than the way that might be evaluated at a Montessori if they're offering different things, or a personalized learning school that might have a radically different structure might also necessarily require a different form of evaluation. So there's other facets that make it necessary for it to be a constantly evolving process.
So maybe the first statement from us is that it has to be dynamic not static. It has to be evolutionary. It has to be adjustable.
Responsive to feedback.
It has to be responsive to feedback. Everyone has to be a continual learner in the process rather than, my way or no way.
One of the biggest things, and they've done a really good job of this now, but one of the things that jumped out to me on this list, which actually kind of combines with this, is teacher preparation. I think that's one of the biggest areas that DISD needs to work on. And again, they have done remarkable things this year. It's been a huge step up in the amount of PD and the quality of PD I think that's been offered. But
PD is what?
Professional development, sorry.
Okay.
But so for example, we have so many teachers who walk into our building as a first-year teacher and have all of the pedagogical background and cannot write a lesson plan, because that was something that just wasn't in their program, or so wasn't something that, and stuff like that, where, and that is a component of TEI. A component of TEI is your professional development, but I think if we could explore it from the onboarding process, the teacher, sustainability aspect of it, where
the onboarding means how you get a new teacher or inculcated,
the orientation, the first year mentorship, pairing them up with a mentor teacher, but also maybe beyond the first year, things like making sure that they understand and walk in with the classroom management plan, stuff like that.
Here was an idea I'd done.
Sorry, I'm rambling now.
No, because this just kind of connects to my own work on this over 7 months, because I'm an educator at heart. I met with some people who were proposing a medical model using residency.
There was a study by McKinsey?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago about international models, and one of the things that they said that in some of the most highly successful educational programs in the world, one of the things they do is a teacher residency, and I think it's brilliant.
Where it's 3 years, like a medical model. You might get out of med school, but you're not going to cut on anyone. You might have to go through 2 residencies,
So where would they be for?
So a residency would be I graduate from, not, with all due respect to TFA or even TFA or Vanderbilt or, whatever the school is. You would then, and let's say you were the mentor, you were the coach. It's good that you at St. Mark's, quite frankly. The best paid teachers at St. Mark's in each department is not the department head. It's this mentor, coach, teacher whose job is to take the best kids, that's the reward. You get more money, and then your job is to make all the teachers better in your area. So the residency thing is that you don't get onboarded. I hadn't picked that up, but you get hired, and you have a 3 to 5 residency, like a neurosurgeon, and you get more and more responsibility, but you're not going to be evaluated like a teacher who has been through the residency. And at the end of the residency, not everyone gets to stay. I mean, that's just the fact of life. You can go and open up your own general medical practice, but you're not going to be an orthopedic surgeon. You're not going to get your fellowship, right, FACS, to be a pediatrician. And you then develop an appraisal system, which is highly peer done in the medical profession. At the end of the day, the faculty is saying, I want you, and you are now able to go out and do orthopedic surgery as a graduate of Southwestern, and you might have been there 5 years. If you're a neurosurgeon or a brain, you're there till you're 35. And so the idea is to take young teachers, say it takes 3 years, and here's the progression. And we will watch you, we will coach you, we will train you, and turn you loose more and more as you go through the residency program. And at the end, you get not only your teachers said, but you've been through the residency program, and now you can go out and be subject to all the other rules and laws. And the one I read, McKinsey, it's a seminal article, it's 3 years. And think of a medical model. How do people become doctors? You do your undergraduate, you go to med school, and then you have to do a residency. After your internship, can you become a doctor? Maybe. You can pass, and you pass a very strict test. So it was an interesting model rather than say, okay, I hire you, right? You're TFA, you had your 5 weeks, we need you, bam, and now go become a good teacher, and hopefully you know what you're doing. Which speaks to some of what we're talking about, and especially if you're alternatively certified. Because if you look, in the last observation I made at Craig Fleischer, who is the alternatively certified AP teacher who now runs the Exxon, math and science thing. He started at Hillcrest High School. He didn't want to be an actuary anymore. They gave him an alternative certification. He was my daughter's AP calculus teacher. But he was so flexible because he didn't know the system. There's now a professor at Rice who is just a savant. And he took the actuary exam in his junior year because he already finished with AP calculus and finished first in the country when Greg was taking his actuary exam. And so, you know, you got to have that kind of flexibility to find those rock stars. I agree with you. That's just maybe another idea for.
I also think in that vein, also, and this connects to TEI, connects to the teacher preparation, and what you were just saying with residency stuff. One of the big conversations around this also that maybe we could have the potential to bring up is making teaching into more of a profession, like you know, people actually thinking of it as a profession. I think a lot of, you know, I mean, nothing irritates me more than the billboard that says "want to teach" on the side of the road or whatever, like. You know, and it's just like, it makes it look like it's just make this phone call and you can be a teacher.
Right.
And like I think if we want to retain and attract and retain good teachers, and we want to retain and attract people to the profession, like, you know, put teacher in the same conversation as lawyer and doctor, right? Then, you know, things like that, like the residency, you know, stuff. I think that's an important, you know, if we're going to look at educational program and look at it from the aspect of how it affects the teachers, I think something that makes it where people think of it as a profession, not something they do, you know, because, you know, other stuff didn't work out, or because, you know, whatever. It should be the first choice, not the alternative. So what can we do?
Because I hear that a lot of teachers being, you know, considered professional like a teacher or a doctor. Would that require more accountability?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm almost wondering if like TEI is going in the right direction for that, and that maybe that, you know, the compensation part of TEI contributes to, you know, if I excel here, opportunities for.
And that's how I think about it. And I don't know if the same people that say that are the same people who are against TEI or.
Right. I mean, and you know, it's just more. I don't know. It's like, again, I'm just throwing out. You know, if we're going to have that conversation, let's have that as part of the conversation.
There's a lot of things when I think of the TEI that I see developing teachers. There are teachers that are at our school. This is common knowledge to me because there were people that never knew how to research data. The SLO presented a problem to them. But it really wasn't a problem.
Stop, SLO.
Student learning objectives.
Okay. So you guys got to kind of translate the lingo.
Sorry about that. I wasn't acronyms. But the thing is, it introduced them to something they weren't aware of, which I think is something teachers need to know. How to look at data effectively, where you're not just guessing
using random numbers.
And I mean, we're talking lower grades specifically, but still. The other thing is professional development. The application for DTR, you did that, right?
Lord.
Yeah, but see, what was great?
Distinguished Teacher Review.
Distinguished Teacher Review. You had to apply after you got a performance level number.
That application took me 7 hours.
And you fill it, you know, you put information in it, and what you're basically doing is selling yourself as a resume.
Yeah.
But what it's forcing you to do is get out of the comfort zone for professional development. You know, just watching a movie or sitting in a room and listening to somebody lecture you. And it really encourages you to mentor, to be with peers, and to teach peers, and to teach, for me, even college level people. We present for college teachers as Reason 6. It makes you get out there and do that. And it also it forces teachers to become strong at their craft, which I think is one thing that needs to be emphasized. To be teaching math, you shouldn't be teaching language arts the year before. I think there's an expectation that all teachers are created equal in the classroom, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you need to find your specialty, and you need to hone it, and you need to tighten it up. And when you get in the classroom, you need to be the expert, and the kids will benefit from that. You shouldn't be replaceable all over the school. Or you should have an area that you're strongest in. And I think that addresses that, because it kind of gets you down the road. You start feeling like, or you should feel like, you have an end goal. Because when you take professional development, there should be a purpose to it. And when you present professional development, there should also be a purpose to it.
Let me ask you a question. So I heard today of a situation of, let's say, a teacher who is a great teacher, but salary-wise is priced out. I mean, they just won't get a raise under the current model. Right.
Is this the TEI model or some other model?
Right. No matter how they're evaluated on TEI, they won't get a raise because they make so much. Now, outside of that, let's say you have a teacher that doesn't make that much, but not that there are a lot of teachers, not that I know any teachers like this, but let's say they figure, let me just keep my head down, do what I'm doing. I cannot make any less than what I'm making, but it's not going to motivate them to improve their teaching skill, and they know that where I am right now, I can ride this out. Is there anything to keep them from doing that?
Great question.
Well, the TEI rubric should be pushing them.
Okay.
Because
well, I'm going to call time out. What I heard you say is there's some financial component at the end.
Right.
If I'm not able to get it for whatever structural reason, what difference does it make?
Right. I'm going
to have a disincentive to do anything other than my own professional self.
Now, we didn't talk about this as DAC when he presented that, but I thought when there's a threshold that teachers are at.
Okay, DAC is the
District-wide Advisory
Committee. That's how you guys got it.
Yeah. Okay. There might be a point where you might have to have stipends for certain levels of pay at the top. Because you want those teachers involved in the teacher, excellence initiative. Yeah. You want them in it. You really want as many people to apply as you.
Yeah, well, don't you? If you're best.
Well, but also, I believe you only retain the status for you can only you get reevaluated every year, and you have to be consistent. Like if you drop for a couple years in a row, then your status drops. So you couldn't.
It's not a civil service step that you get it, but you're not.
No.
It's a lose question.
But I think what Lou's saying is, say someone's making $78,000, and they know that if they apply for DTR, Distinguished Teacher Review, that there's not going to be an opportunity this year or the next year to even achieve that number. So why would they go through the process if they know that there's not going to be an end game?
Well, so a couple things there. One is that
is that right?
Yes, and I think the stipend thing, that kind of, so unfortunately I introduced two scenarios. So yes, the great teacher that, like you say, making $78,000 or whatever, a stipend, I can see how that would still kind of motivate them a bit to participate in the teacher review process.
Because I've thought about this myself, and think about this. If you're reapplying every year, and it's not carrying over, I kind of wonder sometimes if the stipend might be a possibility.
But that other scenario of out of 9 different levels,
right?
If you don't apply for Distinguished Teacher Review, you're going to be one of those.
You're going to get your $78,000 until something changes.
Let's not take $78,000. Let's take somebody who's been teaching for 5 years.
Let's say $50,000.
Okay, let's take $50,000. They know that they're making $50,000 a day. They're not going to make any more. They're okay with being one of those lower 3 levels. Is there anything that gets them out of that mode?
Yes.
Yes.
So a couple things. First of all, as far as the numbers go, first of all, $78,000 under the current system is not even possible. I think the max is $65 or something like that. Okay. With a doctorate, it's $68. The maximum that you can get without going through DTR is $55. Which under the current system would take 15 years of teaching to get to. So already just the 4 levels that you can get to, for example, I am a 5th-year teacher right now, and the progressing 2, so it starts off with progressing 1, progressing 2, proficient 1, proficient 2. Progressing 2 right now is more than I make right now, and that's the second lowest level. And the progressing 1 is more than I made until this year. And so, even then, just looking at the numbers, someone starting out that provision two, not that bad of a number compared to how long it would take for them to get there under the current system. But also going with that, if you're in like the progressing zone for several years in a row, progressing means that you're progressing toward being proficient. So if you're not proficient, chances are your principal or whoever's on your campus will probably be continually pushing you toward that, and chances are if you're not improving, they'll probably help you make your graceful exit.
Okay.
So, because if you're happy wallowing at that level, like the progressing 1 and 2 is essentially designed for like first and second year teachers who are progressing toward becoming a proficient teacher. But if you're a third or fourth year teacher and you're not hitting like even at least proficient 1 levels, with that, there's an issue.
So it's not in the system, but it's kind of put.
I think it is in the system because I think it's like a couple years. I think it is like after 3 years or something.
They've got a couple of fail-safes in there that you can't. It's not a ride out. You just don't ride out in the sunset with that.
I mean, for the commission's point, I think the recommendation is to ensure it's properly not only incentivized but funded, because
that's
there's nothing worse than having an incentive program purportedly based on value to find out there's really no money there.
Yeah,
because the bait and switch sense that it causes in private sector, I don't know about it over here, is a terrific morale killer.
Right.
You have to trust that when you propose a system, and everyone then, because in the bell curve model of this, I think, right, it assumes there's a cap. The math is, right, a cap on the right side of the bell curve. Yeah. But what if there's really absolutely, what do you call it, the distinguished teachers who are greater than the right-hand tail of the right? We all know that.
What if there's more people qualifying for higher pay?
Yeah, then what happens? Because then it's a joke. Because if you already assume, which I think some of the cynicism is, that if we start with, this part, but I can't get down to here because this is locked.
Right.
And I look at the budget that's passed, and there's not this kind of really smooth bell curve distribution of salaries.
Here you go. That's a fairly quick.
Yeah, on a predictive model, then it blows up.
I think that they have like a target distribution.
They do. I've heard Miles do the presentation.
But what my understanding though is that like they are going to readjust the score that it takes to get each one based on the distribution of scores.
Right. So if you keep changing it, and you only have X, right? X. At the exemplary 2, at the, right now, what is that? My eyes aren't good. 84 or 82?
Should be
84, help me out, my young guys.
80.
Exemplary 2 is 82.
Yeah, 82, but you know that because of your salary pool, only so many are going to do there, and yet everyone honestly, qualifies. Then the differentiation around that pool has a large possibility of disincentivizing at the very top. Because at the very bottom, you're going to throw out after 3 years because they're not making any progress. That's a promise up. And then the people in the middle of this curve are going to be kind of slogging through, watching that if I really improve my craft. And there's no hope to even get across into that last exemplary category. You're going to get up and go somewhere else. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm just looking at the math.
Well, they've already adjusted that, haven't they? Haven't they increased those? Haven't they increased the middle group $1,000 or so?
I'm not sure.
I think that's.
But that's the other thing, though. We were talking about the flexibility of the system. Is that the numbers are also flexible.
Right.
Numbers of people like the
amount of compensation. Like right now, if it's at 59, that number could go up. Eventually. The other thing, first of all, just. And thinking of the kids, that wouldn't be the worst problem to have if we had people fighting to get into the top 20% because of how good they are, But I also wonder if we're in that scenario where we do have teachers that really are that good and we've got a large enough percentage of them, we're over 20% of the district as it is right now, then maybe that would be justification for the board to ask for more money in order to pay these teachers because they are that quality,
But I get worried about, and again,
maybe that's
mine's wide open is the old Jack Welch General Electric. Every year, 15% had to go. I mean, that's where this came from, right?
Well,
General Electric, your job as the manager was to get rid of 15%. period, end of discussion, here's the distribution. If you can't find 15%, you're done, you don't get promoted. I mean, it was brutal, and I don't know if the industry does that anymore, but I think it's a nice problem to have if we have more than the 20%. But then, and so, again, I think we can raise all these things and say we support a flexible system. I think if there's not going to be money for it, I think what we can say, it has to be fully funded on an ongoing basis.
Correct.
Because the opportunity cost for someone going to an elite law school and getting a job in an elite law firm here is $130,000 for 3 years of law school, and you might have had 3 years of teaching, and you're wondering, you're dealing with fights in a cafeteria. This person's working 80 hours a week, single, same age, living uptown, and making $130,000. We're never going to cure that opportunity cost. So there's got to be something believable in whatever we're going to propose.
And I think this is the first time I've ever seen that possibility.
Yeah, I'm
But I'm right there with you about the sustainability of it and the money. I mean, that has to be. You can't start something like this and then drop it, or you can't appear to wane when it gets a little tight because you have a good source of teacher involvement.
You have persuaded me to leave it on, and as long as we get your teachers, I mean, that's what you guys represent, in Steffi and whoever. I mean, Lou, you always keep asking these good questions, things I hadn't thought about, like this residency. I think we can combine professional development and figure out how to tie it to accountability, and make sense if you guys come up with the language.
Sure.
I think that's excellent. I just don't want to make it a political issue.
No.
Lou, does that make sense? Help me out here.
I think if we just operate under the auspices that it's not going away, so let's make it better.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll take whatever guidance. I think it's been a great conversation. I've just learned a lot. I heard the first couple of presentations that were made, and I just raised my hand because I'm a closet quant, and I go, well, we never could explain SEI, what 50 means, and the best schools would beat me up when I first started proselytizing this, because you could never move the needle because they were all good at the top, and we wanted to measure movement, not absolute score. And I tried to explain hierarchical linear statistics. It was a total disaster. I was run out of the room. It was, for the record, it was an abject defeat. But it's hard to explain. People don't trust that it can work. So it's got to come from you guys, in part.
Well, I think these are the things we would present.
Yeah.
I would think that we would, just from our experiences.
Well, but also, if we're talking about what's best for kids, I mean, just in more general sense, the highest leverage thing for kids is a good teacher.
Man, I think that's the leading statement. Someone recorded, write it down. That is, the absolute. We could have had 1 month of this and propose whatever it takes to put the best teacher in front of all the kids, all 162,000. And call it a day.
Then you have to tell people, how do you determine
what's the best teacher? And you guys are going to help define that.
That's my answer to that.
Yeah. I want to go back, if I could, because I want to add personalized learning, because you have intrigued me that you got selected. I have to tell you, I don't know what it is, but your enthusiasm has made me enthusiastic. But if I had to sit here and you were quizzing me, Bob, what do you think it means? I've been looking around. I go, Lou will answer it. He loves answering this kind of stuff.
I wanted that so bad. I had to pull out of that. That's principal, and she didn't want to do it with all the new teachers, but I wanted it desperately.
Really? So how does that?
Well,
it wasn't an open competition.
But I thought,
so any school could apply. Any school could have applied, and then
24.
And then I guess there were 24 that ended up applying, and then 8 were selected.
It's a whole school, not just you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the school. I'm part of the school team. It's not me.
Okay.
I mean, I've been playing around with some stuff this year because we were going through this process, but no, our school was selected.
So Marsh Middle School, with all the YouTube BS stuff, is now a personalized learning school.
Yeah. Well, we're becoming one, yes.
Yeah, it takes a process, right?
Yeah, so we've been doing research for the last
Your
3
school
months,
one
and then
I don't think so, no.
it was, I can't remember, I think there were like 5 or 6 schools that got
Yeah, that's it.
selected.
I think 6.
Including one brand new high school that's going to be starting as like a TJ satellite campus. That's like a business school where the kids are in classes, and I think my understanding of it is it's something like part of the day they're in class and then part of the day they're doing like some sort of internship and in the building that the school is in or something like that. Or at least they're working around details, but that's the idea behind it, is part of the day is an actual like business experience. So all kinds of very different things.
Now, what is yours? Because what we wanted to do, we wanted to specifically go after the general ed math scores, especially the African American. That's what, because we knew we needed to pick something that would show the greatest grades. So we thought general ed would be perfect, because they typically have lower scores than that. Because that's basically what you do, right? What is yours based on?
Well, ours is based on the fact that over 50% of our kids are reading below grade level.
So you did reading.
Well, and we looked at math too.
Yeah.
And so basically the whole concept is meeting kids where they are. One of the lines that they use in a lot of the promos for it is, instead of, right now it's like a one-size-fits-all education, or moving toward a one-size-fits-one education, where you might have 25 kids in a classroom, but the idea is that at some point they reach a point where, they're each doing exactly what they need to be doing to meet them at their level. So if, and I've had last year I had a class of 32 where I had a student that was at a post-high school reading level in the same room as someone who was pre-kindergarten, and it had every reading level in between. And with 32 students, you have to teach to the middle, because I can't teach the high kid and I can't teach the really low kid. I have to teach the middle, because the majority of them is like trying to, catch small fish through a large net. It's just like you hope that a couple cling to it. And so the idea is we move to a personalized model where incorporation of technology allows us to like adaptive software that adapts to the kids as they learn. We're moving toward competency-based education, which means that they're not going to move on necessarily to like the next grade or the next thing just because it's time. So like if they're in their class, they might not move on to Unit 2 if they're not finished with Unit 1, because it's more about their competency.
But don't they have to get to some point to take that's the test?
Yeah, and they'll still take the test, but we're still working on kind of how this works around like state testing and everything. But this is something that's been tried out on a lot of campuses and is pretty darn successful.
What can we say about it?
Well, this fits into the whole idea of schools. This is something, I don't know that it's something that we really need to say just because it's already part of where they're already going. Like they're already putting that big pusher, schools of choice and stuff, and the district is hugely supportive of this. So I don't know that it's something that we necessarily need to...
The one thing that I keep going back to, and you talked about, is money. I mean, what you can't really tax more than they're taxing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the allocation of funds.
Yeah, we can. There's always a bond election to be had.
That's what I keep saying. Can bond? Here's a question: can bond money be used for academics, or is it only for structure? Structure. But does it free up money that might be used for structures in the district budget as it sits?
So let me. If you go to our sheet and you look at pre-K. Someone told me there's a lot of vacancies, so why we would expand it. And I said, well, I'm an early child person. Just because it's not fully filled doesn't mean we can't rally the community, but we're going to have to fund it up. And depending on what comes out of Austin, we could ask the Dallas community to create a fund like they did in San Antonio on some basis with some state enabling legislation, which a portion of that could be paid for, whether it's pre-K or 3-year-olds. Really make sure the whole community is engaged in this. I've been criticized. I've been questioned because I have told people I think the preschool proposal that we shared, we didn't really discuss, was pretty good. I mean, when you read the whole 9 pages of it, whether you agree with everything, it's, I thought, thoughtful and worthy of debate. Whether we're talking about 4 or we're going down to 3, and how we work with private providers. But it goes down to the 1, 2, 3, the 4th point we were making here, and I think if we want to say something about money, one of the interesting recommendations we can say is to challenge the board to have a conversation with the people who pay the taxes, Bob and Maggie as an example, and would you go beyond what's there if it was in some kind of lockbox for early childhood or choice? And what I would say to choice is if you added the SB2 deal onto choice, you already agree there's going to be choice. It just opens the door for non-tax-based people, vendors, I hate to use the vendors like Lumen, forget if, Uplift creates havoc, but, or Dallas Can, if I might say so, quite frankly, to say, hey, there's ways to expand the choice model within the context that we philosophically agree, using current state legislation, whatever money that might follow, without taking away from the public funding already as a solution. But one of the things I've been thinking about when can we as a commission say we would support a one time or over a couple of years if we're going to fund up early childhood, carefully constructed program. I got into this. I wish Edwin was here because he's skeptical. There's no results. Does it fade after third grade? We're going to have a really interesting thing, and I'm not saying just blindly endorse what the district staff did, and Alan Cohn did, but it's an interesting starting point about looking at Shirley stuff, just how it all ties together between between 3 and third grade. But, we could come up with some bold things. There is going to be another bond issue necessary. I mean, up in my part, oh my God, the schools, Anne Frank is no place to go. And they're building more multifamily all around it. I mean, when you look, I'm wearing my attendance advisory boundary, and I'm going to bring that little chart. I mean, it's amazing. I passed it out. The overcrowding in some of these schools, and there's just no relief. So, maybe that's tied together.
Right.
I mean, how does San Antonio pass a sales tax for early childhood education? I have no idea how that happened.
I mean, if they can pass, it's not as elementary as this, but if you can pass a tax for bags, you can come up with some money.
I don't know. I saw all that kind of linked as something if we prepare to say to support, new education programs.
And it should be across the. It should be something that all people are involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be.
Property tax is going to. That's a huge lift. And say, would you be prepared? What we think has to happen is there's some good ideas out there. Involve the private nonprofit sector. And are we going to go fund this up? The governor says he wants money for early childhood. I don't know what will come out of the legislature, but it doesn't mean we can't somehow give voice. And I don't know what the law, does it allow us to raise taxes, or are we capped out? I haven't even looked.
Right there.
But is that the limit for the state or just for DIS?
Dallas.
Yeah. There's just
a 1.8 cap, or what is it?
Because I'm just wondering, what if, that would be
or the city takes a referendum.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that would be a good show of the city school district partnership where they say, hey, we're going to shave off our City of Dallas tax just a little bit so that the ISD can raise theirs a little bit.
Wonderful. I would love to throw the gauntlet down. And our other 14 communities.
Right.
Hey, Addison, you don't get a pass.
Right.
Farmers Branch, you don't get a pass. We'll have our own little Robin Hood plan.
Tell you what, we own some property in Whitney, Texas, and they gouge us for their taxes for Whitney Independent School District. I mean, my bill down there is outrageous.
Where's Whitney?
Whitney is on the other side of Hillsborough. It's like if you're going down 35, you get off before you get right past, you'll get off of Hillsborough, and it's about 25 miles from there.
Okay.
All I know is when I got my bill, there's no doubt the ISD took over half of it.
Oh, yeah.
Hence my heightened interest in what goes on. But I would be prepared, I think my wife would agree, if there was some value return in some focused way to put that on the table. Now, I don't know if 15 people will do that.
To me, these are things that are changers. Really, we need things on there that can make,
that's right,
that change something and will better the outcome.
I'm not an expert on oral language development. I respect Shirley English. I think the whole language thing, I can't say I understand whether it's dual language, bilingual. I think, is there something we can comment on?
Well, you know, what you were talking about tends to happen even by the time we get to second, third grade. There's a disparity in skills.
Yeah.
You've got some reading at kinder, some reading at, middle or second grade. And when you're teaching that, if you're not able to somehow...
Well, what do they do in your Montessori school? Is it dual language? Are there Spanish-speaking kids in the program?
Language is not even an issue. Not that I've ever heard.
I mean, is it taught in Spanish, this dual language thing? I don't know what dual language means.
It is at Rosemont. They have it.
Yeah, I know that one year my child's teacher actually got some grant for them to take Mandarin, but that was a one-year thing, and that ended. But other than that, no, there's... Take it back.
Do they teach in Spanish?
No. They can take a Spanish class. And I think, you know what, I think my third grader may be taking a Chinese class now. But yes,
But it's not dual language.
That's
right.
dual language.
What is dual language?
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a difference between bilingual and dual language, right? Because dual language it's mixed, it's not like, and it's a mixture of kids, diverse group, and it's taught, they're taught two languages. So they're taught English and Spanish.
Right.
And then bilingual is for students who have Spanish spoken at home, and it's supposed to be like gradually releasing them into English.
Spanish dominant.
Yeah.
And teaching them English.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll tell you, as a sixth-grade teacher, the reality is that, every year the number of students who come to us having only been tested in Spanish increases, and generally those kids are,
Tested in Spanish.
Yeah, so they have the option of being tested on the STAR test up through fifth grade. And so then a lot of times those students come to sixth grade and, have significant language gaps because, there are some fantastic bilingual programs, there are some fantastic bilingual teachers, but also, pressure of testing, right? It's, and I don't know how I feel about being on public record, but, it's an issue of, right, that I can either have the student test in English and potentially fail because their English isn't that great, or they can all test in Spanish and everything looks great.
So what happens in sixth grade then?
There's
just like that?
Oh yeah, because we have students who are being taught to read in English for the first time.
Well, how does a teacher even overcome that?
Good question.
And how does that affect their?
Remember Oakland when she was talking to us?
Yeah.
She mentioned that there was a variance, kind of an allowance for kids that took the test in English when they weren't proficient in English. They gave them a little bit of allowance because they were taking the test in English early rather than staying in Spanish in fourth and fifth grade starts. But the problem is when they get to sixth grade, there's no accommodations for that.
Yeah, and so the issue is it's just cold turkey. So I've had students, and the issue is it's not newcomers, right? Because we have ESL, which is for the first couple of years that they're in the country. So these are not necessarily newcomers that come to our classes, but and then after that they go into sheltered after the third year or fourth year, I can't remember. But then after that, they're considered general population. So you could have a kid that was born in the United States and comes to me in sixth grade and barely can read in English because they've never been taught in English because Spanish is spoken at home. And I know there's value to the bilingual program when done right, but at the same time, I do think it's worth evaluation when they come to us and there's already just this enormous gap.
Is there a point of view from the Hispanic community? Do they want bilingual, dual language? What's the policy?
And I think bilingual is not a bad idea in theory. I just think in practice it doesn't always bear out.
Right. That's why so many of the middle schools are local farm.
It only goes so far and it stops.
Yeah, and it just gone.
Well, it looks like this whole language thing embedded in that is, and maybe we need it. I don't know how to advance that. It seems to be a hot potato. If we ignore it, it's no harm, no foul. I don't know. I lay it out there looking at this list because language development. English is a second dialect. Linguists is their second language acquisition. What do you think? Do you have a high percentage of Hispanics at Stone? Or no?
We do. Not as high as some other campuses, but around 50%.
And it's just not an issue in the Montessori program. Well, you can only go up to grade 5, right?
No, we go to 8th grade.
So you go to 8th.
Yeah, I've never heard of it being an issue. I think what I've noticed in my early years there, and I think I've seen it at some of the other campuses, like when you say, what does the Hispanic community say about it, they don't say a lot about it, so you just don't hear. So.
Well, maybe that's something we got to...
Yeah, we can.
Is there a person who's in charge of all this at the JSD?
I don't know who it is, but this is
Yeah, for language.
when I have heard
Multi-language department.
What?
more changes on the bilingual front there seems to be, even from school to school, an inconsistency on how they do it. So I don't know if there's actually
maybe that's the point.
Yeah, like
right
stuff
there.
like the stuff comes down, like the issue is not necessarily policy. The issue is like choices being made.
Because they're trying to get people to stay in schools because it's bilingual. Withers, I'm out here in Nathan Adams, you hear now that I'm in this new area, that, well, that's an attraction. I haven't heard a kid interviewed in KERA who was actually being asked to answer an algebra being taught in Spanish. So...
But is that bilingual or dual language?
So I don't know. I'm asking. I mean, I think we need to comment on that.
Math is taught in English.
Yeah.
Math is taught totally in English.
Right? Isn't it like math and social studies or is social
it's
studies?
math, straight out math.
Or
math
science.
is always instructed in English.
But reading's taught in Spanish.
No. In fact, that's. But
All right.
I think, and as far as the parents understanding that, I think when they go to middle school, they think it's just the adjustment.
Yeah.
I don't think they're fully aware
That it's a
there's a drop off because maybe their students or their children have not had the acquisition of English fast enough.
I think that in terms of student performance, yeah, it is. I could see that being a pretty big factor. I mean, in general for the district. So I don't know how we would address it, but in some way we probably should.
I just put a question here. Language strategy. I remember back in the day when I first got involved, the head of language was from South Vietnam. If you go back that far, Phat Dam, he was Sorbonne trained, multilingual, polylingual, PhD. After Vietnamese, he then was proficient. Could tell you that was English and then French. And then he immediately acquired Spanish. And you'd see this relocated South Vietnamese slight person, just a savant with languages, leading the language program as a refugee, resettled refugee from Vietnam. It was just quite the sight. All right.
At some point, I do think we should take a look at the whole pre-K-8 suggestion.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Thank you. I talk too much tonight, but I get excited about this stuff quite a lot.
So you're a big believer in that, right?
Yeah, I'm not a middle school person. I went through 8th. Every teacher knew my family all the time. I mean, you couldn't escape. It was low turnover teachers. And what you didn't know in the previous grade, the teacher understood that, and they had constant conferences. I look at my own grandson. He's changed elementary schools, but it's a small enough town, so his first grade teacher kind of rebuilt his confidence as he went into 3rd grade in the new school.
Right.
And because the teacher really knew the family well, knew my kids and Jake really well, and in 6 weeks he got his sea legs back and his back up. He just had convinced himself he couldn't do the work because he couldn't make friends. And so it just took a teacher from another school having that level of interest and brought back a lot of memories. And I listened to you in the middle school. I don't know. It doesn't prevent fights, but it seems more coherent. And I never understood the philosophy of breaking it up. That's why I like yours going through 8.
Yeah, and
Would you prefer K through 8? I mean, what's the virtue of middle school? It's what, 5, 6, and 7, or 7, 6, 7, and 8?
6, 7, 8. There's also, I don't know. There's also someone who came to one of our meetings and brought up the idea of putting sixth grade back in elementary, or having like a fifth, sixth, like having like a 5-6 school.
Yeah, I think they do that in Allen or Frisco. There's the kind of transition grade.
Yeah, which might be kind of cool, because I do think,
Well,
you
or
know,
ninth grade is one grade
there's
in
a
high school.
pretty big difference between sixth graders and seventh graders, like just in terms of, you know, physiology, even, you know, emotional. I mean, like and even just watching the progression of a sixth grader become a seventh grader the following year, they turn into different people. You know, and I'm wondering if there is value in thinking about reassessing where sixth grade belongs in the continuum. I don't know about K-8, because I never experienced that, but...
Did you have K-8 growing up here in Dallas, or was it always middle school?
I've never known K-8.
No. And I thought when we had our Saturday meetings, I believe they said it was it's the fact that the buildings can't accommodate.
Yeah.
Well,
That's really.
You know, I'm less concerned about. I understand.
Yeah, and I mean that's really the rationale that they keep putting out there. Because I was listening to Shirley and Edwin and them, and they kept saying that over and over. So I'm not sure myself.
But if you, I can't say I'm a big proponent of it. I just I haven't read the data. I know Bill sent it to us, but my thinking is, well, if you take that middle school and now it's a K-8 or pre-K-8 school,
right.
Well, you're taking some of those students that would be in another school. Anyway, it would even out.
Right. Well, when I was in Dallas, I went to Claire Oliver till 6. I went to Rosemont for my 7th grade because they had all the way to 7th. Now, they didn't have pre-K back then. And then Griner was 8, 9, and then high school was 10, 11, 12.
That sounds a little like Plano or somewhere up north where the ninth graders
are like a junior and a senior high.
Yeah, it's like self-contained because you don't want to put the ninth grade kids with the 12th grade kids.
But Griner had 7th grade? They were 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
You could go to Griner, I think, if you were in that zone, the exact zone. But with Rosemont, at that time, they actually had a 7th grade.
Well, what does Rosemont go up to now?
It's 8, but it's because of the dual language. So it has a middle school, technically. Primary, middle, and elementary.
But it's all one seamless building.
Well, no, the primary's a separate building.
But, I mean, it's conceived as
it's an entity unto itself,
Good conversation.
Y'all want to entertain, I didn't want us to go past 8 o'clock. I thought that would be a good break for us. Unless you have something you want to break for. I just don't want to hold everybody late. I think we got a lot right there, actually. I like these ideas.
Let me digest these.
I mean, I think the funding, to me, funding's a lot because the PEI, will that be a potential issue, is funding can
early childhood.
Can support some of what we think the education programs could put outside.
Well, I don't know. I think
I don't either.
We need to put it out on the table and see what our colleagues say, and just say we support something if we do. So for the purposes, as I'm wearing my chair hat on the 16th, I'll turn to you and say we've had a really, whatever you want to report out. We're advancing these things around some themes.
Yeah, and I want to highlight those because I think those are, the other things are basically just an accounting of what's going on already in the district. I mean, how successful they are, how unsuccessful they are.
I think it would be good if all of the chairs kind of spoke to the themes that subcommittees would be talking to.
Yeah.
That way we could get input from other people and say, hey, what about this? What about
this?
But
I would like to see happen on the 16th is say each chair take 10 minutes, summarize where we've been, and then go around, say who else wants to do that. I'm hoping, I've asked Jeff, who's doing a lot of thinking about, SB1, if you looked at his comments and all of that, to write a paper up. If you have a topic you really want to put in the record, then we can synthesize it. I've been going back and reading all the stuff that's been given to us, and I just forgot how much there is. I mean, I just went, wow. Heard a lot of interesting ideas. Trying to synthesize in my own mind how you get to all of this in some really big points that they can take up if they want. I mean, it's very clear to me, as Mr. Thompson told us, there's nothing statutorily or that can compel a sitting board of trustees. to do more than to say they'll, accept the report. Anyway, thank you, Ron.
Sure. You already, is that it? Adjourn the meeting at 8 o'clock.